Ready, people? You can make it right. You do it right on time. You do it right on time. Woman, you can make it right.
The organization was established in 2000 after a change of legislation regarding sex work. So basically it tried to give a response to a changing situation in the legislation.
Yes, you have to make it. You got to make them change their mind and end it. Take your man by the hand.
Sex workers are allowed to work on street sex work locations if they have certain licenses from the municipality saying that this is a zone where you can offer sexual services. And you also have to get a medical license, and this has to be renewed every 3 months if you want to be a sex worker. So it's basically the sexually transmittable diseases, HIV, AIDS, chlamydia, and I think 4 more. So that's about street sex work. And indoor sex work is not that much regulated, so there are certain gray areas in the regulation. But of course, pimping is forbidden. Renting an apartment for sex work purposes is also forbidden. And there are some more criteria that you have to comply with if you're an indoor sex worker. Especially we had a change in the misdemeanor law last year, and it affected sex workers again really harshly. So now these fines that they receive, it can be on a daily basis even, these are aggregated into bigger amounts of fines, and if they are unable to pay these fines, then these aggregated fines are transformed into the sentence of imprisonment.
You can make it right. You can make it right.
There is a paradox situation here. Usually they don't get fined for being a sex worker and soliciting sexual services on the street, because usually they know, it's also thanks to the organization's work, they know where they have the right to solicit sexual services. So there are 3 locations here in Budapest where it's legal, absolutely legal and not penalized to offer sexual services. So if you cannot find them for being a sex worker and working as a sex worker, you would come up with a lot of other causes. So the most common things are littering on the street, not complying with certain traffic regulations. So for instance, on some roads, you have to wear a vest, which is a neon yellow color, to be visible on the street. So these are really common misdemeanors. Also, you cannot step on the road, just you have to be standing along the road. And when the police car would stop at your location, they would ask for your medical license, your ID documents, and then they force you to step over the road so that you can, show them your ID. And then you end up having a fine again. Sex workers are also obliged to work as entrepreneurs, individual entrepreneurs, so they have to pay their taxes after them, and they can be also fined by the tax authority. So they can be also fined by the tax authority if they don't pay their taxes and they don't give out invoices. This happened also quite recently in Hungary, that there was a targeted investigation into sex workers' businesses, sex workers' entrepreneurship, and a lot of sex workers were also fined. So it's also an interesting question. If you don't come up with the appropriate legal framework for sex workers, you don't designate the zones where they can be active, where they can engage in the sex industry and offer services, if you don't regulate properly the indoor sex worker setting and environment, how can you ask sex workers to pay taxes? So Over the years, we faced that it's really hard to find allies when it comes to helping sex workers in need. We had a lot of issues with state care institutions and also with some church organizations. So when there was a crisis situation concerning the safety of a sex worker and her or his family, we really struggled finding them accommodation options, crisis aid, financial support, because usually when people hear that, you know, the sex worker, the victim of, let's say, abuse, domestic violence or trafficking, we would like to place in their institution, when they hear that they are a sex worker, they usually refuse to provide opportunities for them.
You gotta make it right. You gotta make it right. You gotta make it right.
I truly believe that all organizations working with sex worker has to be either sex worker led, so the solutions have to be coming from the community itself. I think it would be impossible to work without, you know, taking into consideration these principles. So even if it's an organization who is providing harm reduction services or any low threshold services to sex workers, I think it's crucial to have sex workers or ex-sex workers in leadership positions so that they can, you know, represent the needs of sex workers when it comes to the definition of programming certain programs. I think this is really crucial. And I also believe that, you know, the change in legislation, decriminalization of sex work will only happen if this is the community itself pushing for this change. So it's also crucial to involve sex workers and give them opportunities to speak up in the wide public, because otherwise, you know, people will just stay ignorant on the long run. This is my belief.
You do it right on time. You do it right on time. Woman, you can make it right.